You may have seen the recent reports in the news about melatonin, where a study sponsored by the American Heart Association found that long-term use of melatonin by those with chronic insomnia may increase the risk of heart failure, the likelihood of hospitalization, and even increase the chances of death from all causes. If you've been listening to the NatureCity podcast the last few years, you may recall that I'm not a big fan of melatonin supplements. At best, they should only be taken occasionally and not in large doses. But the purpose of today's episode is not to say, I told you so. I actually think there's a lot of issues with how the study was conducted, and as a result, it's not clear what we can take away and learn from it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the NatureCity podcast. I'm your host, Pradelli. If you haven't been here before, I'm also the CEO and co-founder of the company, having started NatureCity over 20 years ago with my wife, Beth, and since then it's been our privilege to serve over 500,000 Americans by offering them the best supplements we can make. You may have seen the recent reports in the news about melatonin, where a study sponsored by the American Heart Association found that long-term use of melatonin by those with chronic insomnia may increase the risk of heart failure, the likelihood of hospitalization from that condition, and even increase the chances of death from all causes. If you've been listening to the NatureCity podcast or reading my emails the last few years, you may recall that I'm not a big fan of melatonin supplements and feel at best they should only be taken occasionally and not in large doses, which are being taken by millions of Americans, incidentally. But the purpose of today's episode is not to say, I told you so. I actually think there's a lot of issues with how the study was conducted, and as a result, it's not clear what we can take away and learn from it. We'll break it all down, and after we go through the study, I'll summarize my thoughts and concerns about melatonin supplements and review what I think is a better way to help your body produce the melatonin it needs in the evening. So diving into the study, to start, this research hasn't even been peer-reviewed and published yet, and given the alarming nature of and the controversy of the findings, I don't think the American Heart Association should have rushed to release what they have called preliminary findings without all the details. We could speculate why they did it. It certainly generated a lot of publicity, but it seems organizations like this always trip over themselves rushing to release a potential negative finding about a supplement, but begrudgingly report positive news. It's like, I guess omega-3s can help heart and cardiovascular health, but hundreds of studies aren't enough. We need more research. Okay, sarcasm off. Okay, moving on. In this melatonin study, the researchers looked at 5 years of electronic medical records from 132,000 adults with chronic insomnia from several countries, with most of the subjects apparently coming from the United Kingdom and the United States. This is one of the biggest issues with the study, as melatonin products are sold in different ways in these countries. For example, in the United Kingdom, melatonin is only sold by prescription, so it's very likely medical records from study participants in the UK would reflect their melatonin usage. However, in the United States, as you know, melatonin is sold over the counter, not by prescription. So it may be in your medical records or it may not be, depending on what was recorded by your doctor's office. In this study, if a U.S. resident took melatonin supplements, but it wasn't in their electronic records, they were classified as a non-melatonin user. Not really accurate and would seemingly impact the quality of the study data, as you're going to have numerous melatonin users put into the non-melatonin user group. And then there's the question of the precision of the data. The thrust of this study was to focus on long-term melatonin usage, defined as a year or more. If you're from the UK, that's fairly easy to determine if the medical records show 6 90-day prescriptions, for example. That's logical to assume that person has been using melatonin for a year and a half. Let's say you're from the US and your doctor noted you're taking melatonin supplements. How precise will the length of time information be? I know when I go to the doctor, I bring a list of the supplements I take, because I take a lot, and no one has ever asked me how long I take these products. So again, this creates data quality concerns. Based on their classifications, the researchers found that over 5 years, the melatonin users had a 90% higher chance of a heart failure incident than those classified as non-melatonin users. That doesn't mean 90% of users experienced heart failure. It was 4.6% for the melatonin users versus 2.7% for the melatonin group, for the non-melatonin group. And 4.6% is 90% greater than 2.7%. Now, some knowledgeable observers noted it could be tricky using electronic records to determine heart failure incidents, as they get coded differently in various facilities, which could be another data issue with the study. I have no idea, that's way out of my wheelhouse, but some experts commenting on the study brought this up. The researchers also found melatonin users were about 3.5 times as likely to be hospitalized because of heart failure, and melatonin users were twice as likely to die from any cause during the study period. About 7.8% of melatonin users died versus 2.7% of the non-users over the 5-year period. These statistics sound pretty scary, but again, the study wasn't the population at large. The study subjects were those with chronic insomnia, a serious condition. One question I have, are UK physicians more likely to prescribe melatonin to those who are more seriously ill? And does that in part explain why more melatonin users experienced heart failure or worse? Another question I have, and maybe this gets fleshed out in the final publication, but did the dosage taken matter? I looked it up online, and it appears the most common prescription for melatonin in the UK is 2 milligrams of sustained release melatonin, whereas in the US, supplements contain anywhere from 1 to 10 milligrams of melatonin. Does the form and dosage make a difference? It would be good to know. So while the study suffered from some significant data quality issues and maybe produced more questions than answers, the long-term risk of chronic melatonin use is a topic worthy of better quality research studies to get more definitive answers. We can't outright dismiss it or draw any conclusions, in my opinion. As I mentioned at the outset, I'm not a proponent of melatonin supplements and believe they should be used sparingly, if at all, unless you're following doctor's orders. Surveys indicate about 25% of melatonin supplement users experience grogginess as an unwanted side effect. This means you wake up in the morning feeling groggy or experience drowsiness during the day. And over time, melatonin supplements may disrupt the sleep-wake cycle, also called the circadian rhythm, which can hurt your health over time. Remember, your body only produces a small amount of melatonin in the evening as it gets close to bedtime, and this causes you to get sleepy. Melatonin levels continue to rise as you go to bed, usually peaking at around 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. At this point, the body stops producing and releasing melatonin, and levels start declining as it gets closer to wake time, and as part of circadian rhythm, cortisol levels start to rise to help you wake up. Yes, cortisol in a healthy range is very important, but that's a topic for an upcoming episode. Now, here's an important point. Daytime levels of melatonin in your body are barely detectable. The melatonin your body made is almost gone, so you can feel awake and energized during the day, not sleepy or groggy. Taking extra synthetic melatonin regularly may disrupt this process. And think about the cycle this can create. You feel tired during the day because of the melatonin supplements, so you reach for extra caffeine or energy drinks to compensate, which can hurt your ability to sleep. And then at night, you start all over again. Talk about a vicious cycle. We think for many people, there's a better alternative to taking synthetic melatonin supplements. Remember, normally your body only makes around 300 micrograms of melatonin at night. That's only 0.3 of 1 milligram. If you're coming up short as you age or because of other factors, you shouldn't need to take 5 milligrams of synthetic melatonin to compensate. That can make it extra hard for your body to clear by morning. Instead, you can support your body's natural melatonin production and boost your evening melatonin with the saffron spice, and specifically with a saffron extract used in supplements called Affron. If you're not familiar with saffron as a supplement, there's been a lot of research done over the last 15 years showing that it can help the body cope with stress better and promote better moods. That's during the day. Other compounds in saffron can have important vision and eye health benefits. In addition, the Affron saffron extract helps the body produce enzymes used to convert the amino acid L-tryptophan into melatonin. That's the main way your body makes melatonin. It takes the tryptophan we get from diet and converts some of it to melatonin. and saffron has been shown to help support this process and also increase sleep quality. We think this is preferable to taking synthetic melatonin. The bottom line is the delicate balance of the sleep-wake cycle circadian rhythm is best managed by the body. Your body knows how much melatonin it needs, and saffron can help support melatonin production, so it's more likely to be available when needed. We feature the Afron Saffron extract discussed today in our TrueZ's supplement, along with 2 other complementary ingredients that help you fall asleep faster, sleep better, and wake up feeling more refreshed and better ready to take on the day. You may start to feel a difference from the ingredients in TrueZ's in the first week, but it typically takes a few weeks to feel many of the desired benefits, which many users believe is well worth it. You can learn more about TrueZ's at NatureCity.com. Thanks again for joining me today. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you won't miss future episodes of the NatureCity podcast, or you can listen to us on your favorite streaming service. We're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. This is Carl Pradelli, and I'll see you next week.